brought this ball. I was actually going to use it to wake people up. But this is not going to work because you guys are way out there. There's no way I can get to you guys. So I want you guys to move up closer. This event is all about you guys. It's all about participation. It's about engineering. So without the participation, none of this would work, right? So ask questions, get involved, exchange. So let me start out by saying a few things about the engineering conference itself. We had one recently just at Kiev. The conference at Kiev was the first time we actually had this new format, if you will, which is instead of having one big engineering conference, we're having these local regional offers that year-round that we bring to your office, have local participation, to get a CTO and GDO organization work together so that we can build these events that's about you guys, to bring you guys together, to exchange information and so on. So this format so far is working very well. The next one we're going to have is at Budapest, right? So that we haven't set the time yet. We'll set the time soon enough. But we're going to bring it to Budapest. We're going to bring it to Russia. We're going to bring it to the U.S. afterwards. So you're going to see this rotation that hopefully we're going to bring the speakers around together with us so that the speakers would also extend what their topics are and extend their groups of topics and interest from people. Now, I have a topic today that might surprise some people if you looked at the topic, and it's a true story. So I'll start out and tell you what the story is. I have a confession to make. I've never been the quickest in sports. I love sports. I love playing sports. I like football. But my sport is really boxing. It's really martial arts, right? It's physical contact martial arts. And I've always been puzzled by how some people are just naturally faster. They're quicker. They run circles around, literally. Like, I would be standing there and they just boom, 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 and I couldn't figure out what's happening. And it's really, it annoyed me. I try to understand why there's some people that are so much faster. And am I just naturally slower? Are they just built that way? It's not about the size. There are people bigger than me and still faster. What is it that makes somebody more agile? What is it that makes somebody more quicker? But it's not just that. And I remember I was still in school, and it was a fight, and this guy was just constantly just hitting me. No matter what I do, it's just boom, 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 boom. I have my hands up, I'm covering my face, but he would just keep hitting me until he broke my nose, surely enough, for the 7th time. So I had a few experiences about getting my nose broken. But he would just keep hitting me, and I couldn't figure out why. And I went back to my corner, and my coach is just screaming out of the top of his lungs that, "Sam, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing everything you taught me. I'm doing everything you taught me. My body was working the same way. I'm doing everything. I'm keeping my hands up, tucking my chin in. What am I doing wrong?" "You're not thinking." And so I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. It was like, "I'm not thinking. What are you talking about? I trained for weeks and weeks for this." So I went back out there, and there was one split moment that I realized I actually saw him move, and then he came back, and I realized he was doing the same thing again and again and again. And that's when I realized what he was talking about, which is it's not about how fast you can just go. It's not about how quick you are and how you train. It's also about having the mindset and having that connection with your body and be conscious about it, which is to be able to aware what's going on and respond to it. I still lost the fight. I still lost the fight. There was no way to come back from that. But I'll tell you what, that changed my life. That changed my life. That's when I realized that what you do, you have to have an intention to actually be responsive to whoever you're actually facing. And it's very relevant, I think, to software engineering. This shocked me. This came from IBM a few years ago. They said 60% of IT projects fail. Fail, in this case, is not like not meeting exit criteria. Failed, in this case, is actually they have to stop the projects. And I think out of that 40% they claim actually was successful, I think 20% of those, or 50% of those guys, I think they're lying. I think it's more than 60% failure. And the number one reason they claim, after talking to management, for the reason for failure, they said, do you know what that is? Can you guess what the reason is? That's a good one. Bad estimation, he said. That's a good one. It was the disconnect between the business side and the development side. So whatever development actually wanted, there's a huge disconnect. And when did they find out about disconnect? Not 2 weeks, not 3 weeks, not 4 weeks. 18 months down the line, when it was way too late. It's truly a race now. So years ago, I could say that, for some industries, for some software, for some companies, yeah, you fail some of the IT projects, so what? So what? Now, so what is you become irrelevant. If you're not competitive in your software, you're irrelevant. And it happens very quickly. You can look at industries after industries. Look at the music industries, right? Apple comes in, disrupted, totally changed the landscape. It's not even a matter of just staying alive anymore, right? You have to be competitive. And to be able to be competitive, you have to respond. I can't think of any business out there that could just go straight. If you're planning to just go straight, forget it. Except for drag racing, I don't think that works anywhere else. You have to adjust. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, how do I know? What do I need to look at? What is this adjusting that I need to do? The first thing I think what you need to do is you have to have the right mindset. You have to understand agility doesn't come from just a process. It doesn't come from Scrum versus Kanban versus something else. It is this mindset that comes top all the way through bottom and bottom top again, but it has to go all the way through. And if you don't have that mindset of agility, that understanding that nothing else matters as much as the outcome, the result, what you can see, that's most important for you. If you cannot understand that part, I think it's going to fail. I don't know if you guys know this gentleman. I know. Very good. So look up Info Portal. This is your homework for today, if you don't mind. Look up Info Portal. It's a wonderful gentleman. You'll find him. But he's made some really amazing records. And I think he could tell you more about result-driven than I can, which is you have to set your goal. You have to understand what's important. And you have to understand who actually is setting those goals and work with those people, right? You have to understand what you're building it for. That's what result-driven means. It's not about setting something, blindly following it. That would never work. You have to understand where those goals are for and how does it affect people. You guys, I have to tell you, his rebound is amazing. So forget about the haircut and everything else. But this guy, I tell you, demands open mind. You have to have an open mind to work with this guy. And I hope you won't have customers like that, but but you do have to understand, you cannot keep a certain sacred cow somewhere and say, no, everything else could be agile, everything else could be flexible, everything else could be, responsive, but not the process, or not my team, or not myself. If you're not willing to change, you can't tell people that, you know what, I want you guys to change. It doesn't work that way. So open mind, it's really from the inside, within your team, all the way. Your process, how you develop software, how you work with your team, how you exchange between the team members, the whole thing, right? And this continuous process, it's really what makes it work. I read a wonderful article, in fact, I'll talk more about that later today, about perfectionists, versus progress. And it's a huge debate, which is, when do I stop? When do I start? When do I change? When do I not change? You really just have to ask yourself that, which is, work with the team, exchange with the team, something right is going to float up, and you have to take the middle line. If you bite up more than you can chew, way too much, you will suffer. If you change too little, you're going to suffer as well. It has to be somewhere in the middle. You think I can tell you? You're wrong. There's no way I can tell you the answer. It has to come from the team. And yes, You need to be constantly on your toes. Having a mindset is great, right? You're setting your goals is great. But at the end of the day, if your team is set up with the tools, with the processes, and with people that's not willing to move constantly, it's not going to work. And this also demands something very specific, which is it requires the whole team to be able to dance together. They have to move together. So now we're really blurring the line between QA and engineering. We're blurring the line between engineering and traditional project managers. We're blurring the line between these different roles within that team. Because the whole team would actually have to dance on their toes. They would have to constantly move with what the customer needs, what the client needs, what the market needs. It's a form of communications. It is. And this is better than no communication, trust me. I would rather actually have people be a little bit more confrontational than not communicate. But it is really the key. I know everybody talks about communication, but it is really the key. If what makes this whole system works is that the whole team is constantly communicating. You know about the processes, about stand-up processes and so on. I'm talking about more than that. Is you have to exchange and tell people what works and what does not work. Otherwise, the team won't be able to work together and actually will become very, very chaotic. And keep it very simple. Keep it very simple, right? Anytime you overcomplicate it, you know it's just set up for failure. So the trick, and it's always more difficult to make it simple versus just put everything out there and see what happens. It's hard, but what in this world is worth working for? It's not hard. So everything requires you to actually come back and look at the situation, simplify it, look at what is the most direct line towards the problem, and solve it that way. And it has to be repeatable, and which forces you to look at automation a whole different way. You have to be able to support, the whole system would not work if everybody is spending most of their time filling out numbers, if they're constantly clicking on screens, it would not work. How are you going to speed up your time to market? There was no way. To be able to actually release daily, twice a day, like Facebook was saying, you have to be able to automate as much as possible. Not too early. Of course, there are things that it's not ready for automation, but you have to focus on automation. If you don't, you're always going to be paying for the technical debt from last week, from 2 weeks, from 2 months ago, which means you're not going to be able to go forward. So automation is really key, especially for software engineering. And this, I think, goes back to very close to our company, which is this idea that, no, we're not just building a form and people fill out the screen and that's it. It's about doing the right thing. It's about really striving for the excellence, building the best that's possible out there. And I think that's really what sets it apart, which is there was an intention to build something substantial. If this is not within Agile, Agile could be just as boring, just as not exciting as anything else. This has to be the core of the whole team. And of course, there are lots of ways to do this. There are fun, there are challenges, there's competition within the members and trying to make things work, healthy kind of competition between the members to make it work. But at the end of the day, the whole team has to be passionate about this, right? And we talked a little bit about this, but it's really a balance. This is my personal experience. It's really a balance. You have to trade flexibility and stability sometimes, right? This is just my personal experience. A lot of people might disagree. But if you looked at how much flexibility you can allow within a team and allow your processes and your software, you have to trade it off with the stability sometimes. And I'm not talking about destabilizing the code just so that you can add a couple of features. I'm talking about you have to set the line basically where the bar is properly. If you set the bar properly, you will see that you can actually balance between the best feature set within that time, that period of time, the best stability, right, that's achievable, and it's not overly engineered, that's achievable within a time, and how is it tied to what the customer needs, what the product owner needs. So this balance has to come from the team itself. It has to be an exchange, and that's why I was saying the communication part is so important. If this balance comes from the outside to be forced onto the team itself, you know it's not going to happen. So this is something that you have to critically look for within your team. And I talked about this, you have to constantly improve, right? This is the most difficult part for me, I think. Every project has a natural timeline, a certain curve, that it goes through a certain cycle, and then for some reason, people lose momentum, they lost interest, they lost passion, whatever it is. There seems to be a drop in energy level. But you have to look at that as a sign almost that you need to start picking up and be able to re-energize the team itself by changing the process, improving the process. So this whole process of constantly improving itself, it's not only for the sake of improvement, it also actually allows you to bring back some of that energy into that team, into the cycle. So look at your team, look at your process, and ask yourself, what could be better? It's not perfect. It's never perfect. Anybody tells you that Agile is the silver bullet, they're lying to you, or they could try to convince me otherwise. I've personally been involved in large projects where it's still very difficult to figure out release planning versus Agile. How do those two things meet? How do you do real asset management while you actually have multiple teams depending on each other? Is it really possible to have vertical dependency all the way from top to bottom sometimes? Is that possible? I don't know. But there are lots of things that need to be worked out. And I think this is why we're here today, which is we set this theme up today as Agile. It's not because I think we want to tell the team what needs to be done. It's really we're saying that this thing is alive. Agile needs everybody to try it, to experiment with it, and to improve it itself, right? So by having a conference like this, having all you guys together, what we're hoping to do is you get to listen to the speakers, exchange with the speakers, so that we can actually finally have more and more understanding of what works and what does not work, so that other people trying Agile would not be so, basically they can escape the potholes. So with that, I want to come back to today. I'm super excited about today. As Arcady was talking about earlier, we have a great guest speaker today, Jay McCarthy, and he's here today. I'm very excited. I can't wait for his session. He's coming up right after me. And we have a lot of wonderful speakers from the company itself. They've worked very, very hard to build this material. It's a very core part of the reason why we have these engineering conferences, which is to allow them to have a channel to communicate with you, to speak, and for you guys to ask them questions so that it doesn't end today. It will form these groups, hopefully, that surrounds these topics, right? So if you go into a session, please go to as many sessions as you can, talk to the speakers, exchange with them, and keep that exchange going. It's really important. If it starts today and it ends today, I failed. What I really need you guys to do is form these groups, something that interests you, push for it, exchange, ask these guys about it, and see what could come out of it. So with that, well, thank you all. And so Hino, you're going to come up next to invite? Yeah, okay. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. All right? I'll see you before the end of the day.